hall meeting for the town of Ossining. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, and I want to welcome everybody here tonight. It is not the nicest night outside, and so we went forward with this anyway because we've already postponed it once from the beginning of March when we went through one of our 17 storms that we have had this year. Tonight we're going to learn a little bit about emergency preparedness, and our own local Ellen Kahan will be giving a presentation tonight. Ellen, you are, if you possibly can stand on the other side of the podium because we can't quite see you. So we're going to start off with that. Then we're going to have a presentation on solar power on the residential side. Ross Solar Group is in our solarized Ossining Briarcliff is our residential vendor of choice. And they're going to make a presentation, and then we'll have an open mic time. So I will leave it to Ms. Kahan.
Welcome. First thing I'd like to do is just point out the exits. There's an exit right there in case we have to evacuate, and there are exits over there. Any discussion of disaster preparedness without making sure you knew where to go would be kind of humorous. A while back, things were pretty predictable, but after Irene, after Floyd, after all the storms, the governor came to the realization he needed a citizens' corps for disaster preparedness, not people to go out and rescue, you're not first responders for the neighborhood, but people who can be prepared in their own homes and in their own neighborhoods.
Want me to turn that around for you? I just have to turn the podium around.
Oh, thank you.
Stefan is from Ross, and he's been here before making presentations. So.
Experience.
You want me to just, I can just
In
talk
that
about the
case,
next slide for you.
I'm just going to come up here.
Oh, no, Stefan will do it for you. What is the service of this one?
Let's see what's going on here.
You look toward the projector. Try clicking toward the projector.
There we go.
There we go. Yes. Okay, thank you. The objectives of this course are to be an introduction of how to respond in a disaster. But before you can respond, you need to prepare. At the end of this course, you'll be able to understand what the different types of disasters are, how to be prepared, and what to do to sustain yourself during it, and how to recover from it. The first part is about preparation. That's the longest part, because if you're not prepared, you're not going to be able to respond and recover properly. After that, there's a short break, which we can skip, and then we can continue to the recovery part. Again, this came up after Superstorm Sandy when the government realized we want to be there for everyone, we can try to be there, but we can't always. We're going to cover three types of disasters. There are natural disasters, there are man-made disasters, and technological. A natural is an event over which man has no control. For example, a hurricane. It happens, you can prepare for it, you can't stop it. A man-made is caused by a deliberate action of people or failure of a man-made object. And technological are glitches in technology that cause a breakdown. We'll look at a few of them, and I'm sure you all are experienced in quite a few of them. First is natural disasters. Well, what are some that come to mind quickly? You could just shout them out.
Snow.
Yes, snow.
Tornadoes.
Tornadoes.
to review the list.
What are some that you can think of now that you wouldn't have thought of 20 years ago? Ebola. Yeah. Or even tornadoes. I know a woman who was driving along with her husband, who is an environmental scientist, and she said, "Honey, look at that sky. It looks like there's going to be a tornado." And he said, "We don't get tornadoes here." Well, a week later, she was driving along down on Route 9, and she saw the tornado, and she said, told my husband, all she could think is, "Great, I'm going to get killed in the tornado before I get to say I told you so." Man-made disasters, what are some you can think of there? Metro-North trains. How about the dam, if a dam collapsed?
Indian Point.
Indian Point. Terrorism. Again, if you want, I can read the list, but yeah, we'll just skip that. Technological disasters. Those are interesting. We're talking about communications failures, transportation, water system, etc. Of course, there's one other that we didn't cover on the other slide that's interesting, and that is space weather. That's one, again, that you sit there and say, space weather? Electromagnetic issues. When you have solar flares, they impact your communication. So your communications could fail. This is one that 100 years they wouldn't have thought of, 100 years ago. What gets interesting is when you look at New York State's risk profile. This isn't to scare you, this is just a fact of life. New York State has a very high risk. We are a high population density. We're subject to different types of weather. I know we don't normally think of us as having a lot of snow. This year we did, but then think of what normally goes on up in Buffalo. We have hurricanes. We run the gamut. We have a lot of man-made structures, bridges, dams, nuclear power plants. You need to understand what kind of disasters might affect you and your family and your community. The idea is not to be prepared for any one kind of disaster, but to be prepared for any kind of disaster that comes up, the general preparedness plan. Again, we talk about prepare, respond, and recover, with the first part being prepare. In the event of a disaster or an emergency, resources may not be available. You may not be able to get out to go anywhere. Picture a snowstorm where you can't get out of your house. Or the streets may be flooded or impassable. And people may not be able to get to you. A first responder, if the roads aren't there, they can't get to you. The stores may still be there, but if the supplies are gone and the supplies can't get in, you can't get supplies. So being prepared is 3 simple steps. Develop a family emergency plan, stock up on emergency supplies, and be aware before, during, and after. To develop a plan, you need to meet with your family and discuss why you need to plan and prepare. And this plan should be appropriate for the ages. What you tell your 13-year-old is not the same as how you would explain it to your 3 or 4-year-old. You need to stock up on emergency supplies, discuss the types of disasters that are most likely to happen and what to do in each case, and pick 2 places to meet. You want one just outside the home. That would be if the house catches fire, if there's some structural issue and you need to get out. You all meet outside and be safe. You also should have a place to meet outside of the neighborhood. If you have to evacuate and you're not all together, where can you go? Someplace that would be outside the zone. You should have a family communication plan. Have an out-of-town person who everyone can call to say what's happening. So that if you have to leave, you call them and let them know, we're okay, we're going here. Other people then can check in with them. Because the phones in your area may not be working. And the cell towers in your area may be overwhelmed. Discuss what to do if the authorities ask you to evacuate. And generally, they're not going to ask you to unless there's a real necessity. So when they ask, do it. Be familiar with your escape routes. Everyone relies on the satellites now for their TomToms and their GPS. They may not be working, they may be down. So have maps, the old-fashioned maps, with your escape routes on them, and teach people who are younger than I am how to read the map because they may never have had to do it. I've got my phone, why do I need a map? And plan how to take care of your pets, and be aware a lot of shelters will not accept pets. Know what services or plans exist for the organizations that you're involved in. Your schools, workplace, daycare centers, elder care or seniors, babysitters, and make sure your babysitter is aware of the plan and what to do and that they have the information, because they may be the ones who have to run out with your children. If you want additional information, there are a lot of community-based volunteer opportunities. Here in Ossining, you have OVAC, which is the ambulance corps. You have the fire department. There's CERT, which is the community emergency response teams, which are volunteers that help out in an emergency. There are faith-based organizations, such as IFCA, which is Interfaith Council here in Ossining, the Salvation Army, the American Red Cross. Be aware there's the New York Alert, which is a free state service. It's subscription-based, and you register at www.nyalert.gov. And there's also a mobile app for it. With that, you sign up for locations, and you'll receive alerts for any incidents in those locations. Be aware of warning sirens. Here we have the ones for Indian Point. So we're all familiar with them. There's also the emergency alert system and the emergency broadcast system. Remember the old on the TVs? I didn't want to do that into the mic. Well, those are great. Of course, if you are on a cable channel or a FiOS channel, one of those that's not in broadcast, you won't be hearing it. And if you're listening to your satellite radio instead of the regular radio, you also won't hear it. But they are still out there. There's also something called the NOAA radio, and this is really cool. They're commercially available, and they actually, many of them will have a wake-up for a weather alert. So it will be silent unless there's a weather emergency in your neighborhood that it will wake you up for. They're not that expensive. I believe they run around $30 or $40. I confess I don't have one. Another is the wireless emergency alerts. These send an emergency alert to certain enabled mobile devices such as cell phones and pagers. Unlike the New York alert that we talked about earlier, this one will be promulgated by the cell stations in that area to any mobile phone that's in the area. So if you're signed up for that, you will get alerts where you are that are for your area, whether it's in the middle of the country, out on the West Coast, or here. The only caveat is you have to have a WAEA capable device. Providers such as AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon do have them, and they are required to tell you if your phone, when you get it, is not enabled. And get involved. Not everyone is in a position to take care of themselves during an event. Keep an eye on your friends and your neighbor. You've got you and your family, and then you have your neighborhood, and then you have your community. And when we all work together, we go from being prepared individuals to being a prepared community. Preparing your home and your family. Well, a while back there was a Hurricane Irene down in Florida. And a very dear person who's related to me was down there and called to say, "Oh, we're fine. I said, "You have your phone, you have power?" "Well, no, we have no power. The phones are out. It's going to be at least a week and a half minimum." I said, "Well, you have your car charger?" "Well, no, I left it up at my daughter's house in Connecticut." I said, "Well, would you please save your battery for an emergency? I'm glad you called, but save it for an emergency." I was told, "It's okay. The minute I hang up, I put it right back in the charger." I said, "The charger plugged into the outlet in the house with no electricity. I'll call you when we get power back." And I laughed about this, and I have to admit we had quite a few jokes at this family member's expense until the next blackout, when I hit the same light switch for the umpteenth time and the same thing didn't happen. We have our habits, we have our backup plans, and even if they had the car charger, as people on Long Island learned during Hurricane Sandy, or after Hurricane Sandy, they couldn't get the gasoline to charge their cell phones. So you need backups. One thing to prepare for is fire safety, and that's critical. Actually, these are all critical. Limit and properly dispose of unneeded and excessive combustible materials. The less fuel you have for a fire, the quicker you can get one under control. Have new and test your existing smoke detectors. Remember, every time you set the clocks, you check them, you change the batteries, and make sure they're working. If in doubt, replace them. Obtain a fire extinguisher and train your family members in use. Now, any fire extinguisher can't necessarily be used on any kind of fire. There are 3 types that we talk about. Class A, which are your ordinary combustibles, wood, cloth, paper. Class B, which is flammable liquids, kitchen grease, oil, gasoline, etc. And Class C, which is electrical equipment, appliances, and televisions. And if your kitchen is the way mine is and you cook the way I do, you should know how to put out fires. Water is okay only on a Class A fire. Any other fire, it's going to make it worse. The most common extinguisher is an ABC. That can be used on all of the Class A, the ordinary combustibles, the flammable liquids, and electrical equipment. Eliminate sources of carbon monoxide poisoning. I think one of the most hysterical training things I ever heard about was a group of, I'm not sure if it was first responders, who were given a scratch and sniff pad for carbon dioxide, and they were saying, mine doesn't smell, it's defective. Well, bottom line is, it's odorless, it's colorless, and it's a killer. So you need to be careful about your generators, heating units, damaged furnaces, boilers, and heaters, and you need to be very careful because they can cause carbon monoxide poisoning. Carbon monoxide detectors should be installed in your homes, and just like the fire detectors, make sure the batteries are changed. Location will vary, so go at the manufacturer's instructions, but make sure they're near the sleeping area so they'll wake you if you're sleeping. It is law that they must be in your homes, so if you're in an apartment and your landlord has not provided one, let them know they need to. However, maintaining it is your responsibility. Make sure any damaged utilities, home utilities, are repaired. They may be after being compromised because they too can cause carbon dioxide. I know where your utility shutoffs are and how to secure that your circuit breakers and fuses, your fuel gas, whether it's natural gas or propane, and your water supply. Know and have available the necessary hand tools to complete the task, because electrical tools don't do you any good if there's no power. You'll see this warning, and you'll see it over and over again. Once turned off, never attempt to turn on any gas, electric, or water connections until the system has been inspected and approved by a professional. Now, we're not talking about I'm working on my hot water heater, or I'm replacing a faucet, so I turned off my water, I can't turn it back on. We're talking about having it turned off because you've been advised to by the authorities, or because there might have been damage. You might not be able to see the damage. A minor shift in an earthquake, or for whatever reason, you may not see a break, but there may be a gap in a line and you get it with a gas explosion. To show off your electrical, it will either be a breaker or fuses. Your gas valve will either be the meter, most likely, and you'll see there's the off is, if it's a righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. If it's a turn one, and if it's the lever, you'll see that the horizontal or the perpendicular is Off and on will be if it's parallel. When you go to turn off the fuel gas, you may have a large cylinder, or you may have multiple meters. If you're in an apartment building, you most likely have multiple meters, and frankly, your super will prefer to turn off the utilities instead of having you do it. Again, fuel oil or kerosene, you should have the turn-offs near the tank. Those are good to know where they are. Again, you don't want to have a large oil spill or kerosene. It's both flammable and an environmental hazard and quite expensive to clean up. Water supply, you'll have either a curbside valve, which you may not have access to, or an inside water valve, which you will have access to. Again, the same warning. Never, ever attempt to turn them on once they are turned off, until they've been inspected and approved by a professional. My sister-in-law had to get her electrical system approved before they could turn her electric back on. She lives in East Rockaway. In New Jersey, with Seaside Heights, I believe, after they've recovered from Hurricane Sandy, a lot of the businesses burned down. And they finally determined that it was because of salt water that got into the electrical connections under the boardwalk. Had they been inspected before being turned on, those buildings would have still been there. Make sure you know what you're covered for and review your homeowner's renter's insurance before the disaster. Most homeowners and renters insurance will not cover flood damage. Make sure you have lists and photographic records, digital is best, of your valuables, and store them in a watertight container so that you can have them and they won't be damaged. Stock up on emergency supplies. They're now saying to be prepared to be on your own for at least 7 to 10 days, and that's the minimum you should have. Identify and collect your supplies as soon as possible. This doesn't mean run out to the store tonight. You can do it gradually as you shop. And have a smaller go kit for use if a rapid evacuation is necessary. The website www.prepare.newyork.gov.ny.gov, there's a lot of information on this. One thing to realize, your supplies don't necessarily have to be a separate supply group. You don't have to have, oh, these are my emergency. If you have enough in your house for that period that you use and you just keep replenishing, that's your supplies. So it doesn't have to be discrete. And you don't need to get them all at once. You can pick up a few items each week when you shop. Make sure you have a first aid kit. At a minimum, you'll need gauze bandages, trauma, etc. You need to be able to take care of yourself because the first responders may not be able to get to you. One thing to remember is, in an emergency, in very many ways, you are the first responder because you're the one there. You're the first responder for your family. Your emergency supply should include protective equipment, a whistle, because that noise goes very far and requires very little energy. Work gloves, eye goggles, reflective vest, light sticks, closed-toe footwear, sleeping bag. Again, emergency blankets, a backpack for evacuation. The key for this supplies is to sustain yourself, and you're looking for calories, not necessarily health, as far as nutritious, natural foods. You want to be able to keep yourself going. Energy bars, canned food, non-perishable foods, a manual can opener. Again, you might not have electricity, eating utensils, and drinking water. They say you should have a gallon of water a day per person. That's 10 gallons of water per person, which is almost 2.5 cases per person. Now, one thing I was always taught was fill the bathtub. You're obviously not going to drink that water, but you can use it for some hygiene. You also don't have to have it all this time. They make collapsible water containers that you can get, and when they hear that something's about to happen, a storm, you can fill them up. You'll want hygiene supplies, toothbrushes, toothpastes, feminine hygiene products, garbage bags to put all your items in and keep the place clean, quart and gallon size sealable plastic bags, 10-day prescription supply. Again, you don't want to run out of critical medications. You may be able to get a vacation pack through your insurance, they cover that. For certain items such as, for other items you may not be able to, and you may need to go to your doctor to get them. Toilet paper, towels, soap, shampoo. Again, adjust this for your family's needs. If you have elderly people, they may need different items. You'll want tools, a cell phone charger, LED lantern with batteries, flashlights. Again, I don't think I need to read the whole list. You can also get solar-powered batteries to charge your cell phones and laptops. That's something you might want to share with your neighbor. One thing we're doing is getting solar energy, and we're hoping in a few years when the technology is more mature to be able to add a battery for it to have as backup. So that instead of a generator, we would be charging the battery from our solar and then have that to kick over if we lose power. The batteries right now, from what I'm told, that technology is still not mature, but we will have the solar power all set up so that when it is ready, we can just hook that in, hopefully. Part of your emergency supplies should include a document holder, email and telephone list. Again, you may not be able to get it out of your phone because everything may be down. And by the way, those plastic bags, these all should be in sealable bags. Your medical history and medications list, your contact info for your family physicians, cash and banking information, copy of home and auto insurance. Passports is one of the only documents that a copy does you no good. You should have the originals handy and ready to go. Copies of your birth certificates, social security cards, and any other important documents. Your kit needs to fit your individual needs. You may need infant and baby needs, considerations for people with disabilities or special needs, and considerations for your pets. Your typical pet kit would include pet food, bottled water, medications, veterinary records, immunization records. You should have those for yourself and your children also, but if you do find a shelter that takes pets, pretty certain they will not allow them if you don't have the immunization records. Cat litter and pan, manual can opener, food dishes, first aid kit, a leash and/or crate. Again, in a shelter, if you find one that takes pets, they're going to require a leash and/or crate, possibly even both. Your emergency supplies should contain an evacuation go kit, which is a smaller version of your emergency supplies. Now, this is something that you need to be able to carry and have with you for a distance. So you want to try and keep it as lightweight and portable as possible. Again, to assemble the go kit, you want to have the sturdy backpack or duffel, water and container, non-perishable foods, flashlights. If you want, I can read the whole list. It's also at the New York Gov site. You can find it. Once you have your go kit and your emergency supplies, identify the perishable items and be sure to rotate them so that you don't end up with a bunch of expired food. Learn basic first aid. In an emergency, normally you're taught, you see someone there, and the first thing you shout is, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Someone call 911." And that's standard first aid practice. But in a disaster, you call 911 and the phones may not be working, or the circuits may be overwhelmed and the call can't go through. Or the first responders can't get to you because the roads are destroyed, or they may be dealing with another emergency even more critical. So in an emergency, in a disaster, you are your family's first responder. So you should learn for basic first aid. Make sure you check your surroundings, make sure it's safe. Having 2 people injured doesn't do the first person any good. Care for the person to the extent that you're trained. And if you need help, do call. We're not saying don't call, but only call if it's really necessary. Learning to stop bleeding can save a life. Learning how to respond learn how to respond if you want to. The Red Cross runs training classes. You can call the Red Cross and learn. It's as simple as A, B, C, D. Ensure the person's airway is open. Ensure the person is breathing. Ensure the person's heart is beating, that's the circulation, and learn how to use the defibrillator. The next section is much shorter. So if you want, we can take a break or we can just continue.
I think we'll just continue.
Besides, who knows if we take a break, how much snow might accumulate. Once a disaster strikes, you are the first responder. You have two options: shelter in place and execute the plan for staying safely in your home, or evacuate following local evacuation orders and execute the plan. If you're told to shelter in place, do it. It's important. I learned that one the hard way. If you shelter in place, check on your neighbors. Maintain communication and information flow from the authorities. You can have a hand-cranked radio so that even without power you can hear it. They also make the hand-cranked radios right now that can actually charge a cell phone. It's pretty cool. It's also great exercise. Make sure your generators and space heaters are properly ventilated. Again, carbon dioxide is a killer. And make sure you've got a functioning carbon monoxide alarm. If you shelter in place, let someone know where you are so that people don't come around looking for you and trying to find you. Shut off the utilities damaged by an event and stay away from all downed wires. The assumption is any downed wire is live. Even if it's a wire and you know it's the cable wire, so how could that be live? It could be short-circuited over to the electrical wire. And at that point, it will be conducting and it can kill. Monitor the alerting systems, listen to the emergency radio for any weather, emergency notifications, evacuation orders, etc. And use 911 to report life-threatening conditions only. Again, you're probably going to be overwhelmed. Why is there sometimes a boiled water order when it looks perfectly good? Well, it's a precaution because there's the presence of organisms that can cause an illness. Physical damage to a water system can increase the possibility of bacterial contamination, such as a water main break. The water's going out, well, skunk can get it. Although that's not the technical term. If you have any question regarding the quality,
That's the right term.
if you have any question regarding the quality of the water, boil it. Be safe. If there isn't boiled water, you can strain the water through cheesecloth, a coffee filter, or any other clean filter material to get out any particulates, but that won't make it safe necessarily. You need to bring it to a rolling boil for 2 minutes to kill any pathogens. And pour it into a container that's been boiled or sanitized with chlorine bleach. Because if the container is contaminated, the water will quickly become recontaminated. To preserve the quality, refrigerate the water until use. Do not use unboiled tap water for anything that can end up in your body. Drinking, ice cubes, medications, brushing teeth, baby formula, washing your fruit or vegetables, preparing food, coffee, tea, etc. Washing dishes, because again, the contaminants have been on the dishes, bathing or caring for pets. What do you do if you're trapped? Well, can you get to a cell phone or telephone? If so, call 911. Try to figure out what's trapping you. Is it a blocked exit, debris, injuries? Can you call for help? Use whistle or tapping. Yelling will only tire and dehydrate you. Again, that's why that whistle comes in so handy. I also just keep thinking of the Titanic movie where she whistles. And be careful when you move what's blocking your exit, because you don't know what it's holding up. When you move, they let something else fall on you. Escaping a partially collapsed building can be like playing Jenga. You take out one and it's fine, you take out another, it's fine, and suddenly the whole thing collapses. Newton's third law, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and it's not always the one that you're hoping for. What if someone else is trapped? Are they within sight? Can you reach them? Can you hear them calling out or making noises? Can they answer questions? Do they seem to be alert? And can they move on their own? Can you free them safely? Again, your own safety takes priority. Two people being trapped means that there's no one to alert the authorities. So if you can't get them out, call 911. The decision to attempt a rescue or wait for trained rescuers can be difficult. You want to get it in help, but you need to be safe. Again, if you're trapped, you can't guide someone and get the help. At that point, your safety is the first consideration and the most important. If you have to evacuate, check on your neighbors and make sure everyone knows to evacuate. And do so in an orderly manner. Know your destination and travel route. Again, have that map handy and marked. If there's time before you evacuate, secure your home. Move damageable items to a safe location. Turn off the utilities, lock doors, board up if necessary or possible. Write a note and tape it to the door telling others where you intend to evacuate to. That both lets people find you, and it lets any first responders who come know that this place does not need to be checked, that you are already safely out. That could save someone else's life by saving time. Take your go kit. That's why it's there. Notify someone where you're going and let them know when you arrive. And do not return until someone's notified you that it's safe. Well, you survived the disaster and now you're ready to recover. Once it's determined by authorities that it's safe and you may return home, and again, don't until they do, let someone know where you're going and when you get there. Check for structural damage before entering it, and if there's any doubt, have a professional check at it. The life that you save could be not just yours, but your family's. Have the utilities turned back on by a professional after inspection and approval, and check appliances for damage before re-energizing. The local authorities will give direction on waste disposal procedures, so follow them for food waste, household waste, construction debris, vegetation, etc. Make sure to contact your insurance company. This is when those pictures you took will come in very handy. Be alert and be wary of and report any scams. Document the damage and check for disaster assistance programs that may be available in your community. There are going to be experts to help you with filling out forms. And while we all know what the damage is, we only know what we should be compensated for, there are often very specific ways you need to state it. We were helping a family with their house after Sandy, and they were having a very difficult time collecting because it was either they put down water or they put down mold. The mold was caused by the water, but if you put it one way, it was covered. If you wrote it the other way, it wasn't covered, and it was the exact same thing. The people who work for these agencies and are educated know how to do this. Enlist their help. And remember, be careful about the scams. Take the time to check out and make sure people are licensed and they are legit. And again, never attempt to turn on any gas, electric, or water connections until inspected by a professional. Always assume any down line is live and dangerous. And don't forget, right now we've all been concentrating on the physical, but a disaster takes an emotional impact also. And everybody's going to have a reaction, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to have the same reaction, and it doesn't mean they're going to have the reaction at the same time. Some people may react immediately and go to pieces. Other people may be the strong, stalwart person, and 6 months, a year later, they'll be watching a TV or a movie, or something will happen that just brings them back and they collapse, and they have their reaction. And that's okay. If you're having, but please feel free to seek counseling. It doesn't have to be a professional. It could be clergy, a mental health counselor, other trained professionals. There are crisis hotlines that are anonymous, but utilize them. Your emotional health and your emotional recovery are very important. And that's a part that often gets neglected. So be there for each other. Remember that your family will all react differently, and different isn't wrong, it's just different. And remember, you need to be prepared. As prepared in your home, prepared in your community, your neighborhood, and then we all get through it together. If you're a technical or trade person, you can join the Civilian Emergency Response Corps. They always need electricians, pipe fitters, plumbers, line workers, etc. You can be trained, certified, credentialed, and deployed to perform disaster response and recovery. Again, www.prepare.ny.gov has information about this. So please, look it up, avail yourself of it, and be ready. Thank you. Now, we do have a little gift for everybody, so afterwards, if you hand in your survey, and we'll give you your little gift. It's a nice gift.
Does anybody have any questions?
Hello. Does anybody have any questions? Very good. Thank you, Ellen Kahan, for an excellent presentation. So while we've had others like this, every time you see one of these presentations, you do learn something new, or it reminds you. We've had a couple of years, besides our 17 snowstorms in 6 weeks, we have had a couple of years without a major storm, knock on wood. But you always want to be prepared for things that are happening. And with climate change, one can never tell, because you're absolutely right. There are tornadoes where there never were tornadoes before. There's all sorts of different weather patterns happening nowadays. Thank you very much, and please fill out your questionnaires. Ellen, could we possibly have this presentation to put on our town web? Can you ask?
I will ask before no, but I will.
Okay.
I will ask.
It's my usual question, and sometimes I get yeses and sometimes I get no's. So, but if you could ask, we have it on camera. It will be on television. It will be on public access television as well as government channel. If you want to review it again, it's very interesting to do. And now, as Stefan sets up his PowerPoint presentation for our Solarize program, let me introduce Solarize to you. Many of you have already been to a presentation of Solarize Ossining Briarcliff. In our particular case, there's a Solarize Westchester program going along. There's a Solarize Westchester program going along, and in phase 1 of that Solarize program, Westchester program, 4 groups of municipalities got together. We are the Ossining, which is the village and the town of Ossining, as well as Briarcliff Manor. There's also Mamaroneck and Lodgepont, there's Croton Portland, and there's Bedford Monkisco. And what happened is there was a group of municipal people that got together, and as you can see from that picture, I think you can see it, we have representations from Briarcliff, the village of Ossining, and the town of Ossining. And at that time, we got together, made a presentation, made a proposal. We do RFPs just like we require people to do RFPs for ourselves. And we did an RFP, and we were accepted into the initial program for this Solarize program. What happened then was vendors were picked. One vendor was picked for the residential community, and one vendor was picked for commercial. Tonight we are very privileged to have and being able to put it on our TV show, our town hall TV show. Our Stefan from Ross Solar, who is our residential provider. I'm going to let him do all the explaining about it, but one of the keys I want to tell everyone is you must sign up by June 1st to be in this program. It's very important. And there's our June 1st deadline date. And so, Stefan, shall I leave it to you and you can take it from here for us?
Yeah, sure. So, borrowing from some of the Solarize program slides here, I'm not as familiar with all of them, but I'm going to skip into some of the raw solar group stuff. So, Suzanne did a great job of kind of summarizing what Solarize is. Essentially, the town has opted into a program that is being run on a larger state level. So NYSERDA, the Sustainable Energy Research organization, who does a lot of the New York-based renewable portfolio standard initiatives, and they want you to go green. They do the energy audits. They are also coordinating the Solarize program. And through a process, towns opted into it to share their resources, like this beautiful venue here, the volunteers that have been involved, to help make it a success. So Ross Solar Group, we kind of come in at the end of that. So after all of this organization is put into place, they have to find a vendor with which to work, and they wanted to vet us for our experience, our product offerings, our knowledge, so that to make sure that when they introduce a contractor to the constituents in a town, that it's somebody they feel can represent what is the ultimate goal of Solarize, and that is to help people go green, cost control, and save money on their utilities. So to kind of really quick just segue from disaster preparedness, solar does play a role in some of that, but not really by default. And Ellen was talking a little bit about batteries, and I will say that her system will be compatible with batteries. And there you are, you're still here. So they would be very easy to put those on one day when the time comes. And there's even some limited capabilities of it now that we can talk about after the fact. So solar by default would not necessarily be a standalone item in the event of a disaster, but it will certainly provide you with a lot of savings for decades and decades to come on your electric bill. So a little bit about Ross Solar Group. We'll work in a second, So we cover a lot of Connecticut, actually all of Connecticut, a large portion of New York. We've done a lot of business down in New Jersey as well as out in Long Island. We've got over 2,000 residential and commercial installations under our belt, including some big box stores, your Pfizer, Bed Bath & Beyond. We've done a lot of municipal work. So we've worked with very complex, high-level organizations before, and that's kind of a testament to our experience. But our bread and butter is still residential installations. Frankly, it's my favorite thing to do, and a lot of people at our company really enjoy that the most. We're located nearby in Danbury, and we do have all the appropriate certifications and accreditations to do what we do. So I'm going to rush to the answer on this one. We're not going to wait around for people to figure it out, but essentially all of these seemingly unrelated items have something in common, and that is they are all younger than the modern solar panel. Solar panels feel like they're a very new technology, when in reality, they've been around for about 60 years. The technology hasn't really changed that much. They've gotten more efficient and less expensive. What's new about it is installing it on our houses and bolting them to our roofs and using it to offset our electric costs. As costs rise, the need to take control of that operating cost grows, and therefore solar becomes a new ingredient in our day-to-day lives. But it's actually been around and proven itself for quite a long time. So I realize this is a dark slide, but I'm going to try my best to talk through the basic components of a solar array. So we've all seen the solar panels up on a roof. In this case, it's all blacked out, but we do have one out in the hallway if you want to take a look at what a solar panel really looks like. These are what you see on the roof. It's it's the most significant part of the solar array. Essentially, there's no moving parts. It works off of light, not heat, to create electrical current. So when you're creating that electrical current on the roof, the biggest, broadest unused surface of your house, that power can then be routed down into your house. So component 2, it's called the inverter. This unit takes that power and makes that electricity compatible with your home and with the utility grid. This is the only device that might need maintenance in the whole project over the course of, say, 20 to 25, even 30 years. The solar panels have a life expectancy of 30 to 40 years. The inverter, you're going to get maybe 18 to 20 years out of it, maybe more, but if you plan on that, you will go through 2 inverters for the life of the solar panels. Third component is going to be your own breaker breaker box. So after that power leaves the inverter, it's got to get distributed through your house. So your fuse box is the best way to do that. If it's a sunny day and you are running things in your house, you're literally at that moment running your house on solar power. But should you turn everything off and go to the beach on that sunny day, you will now be pumping that solar energy out to the utility grid. As you can see here, I don't know if you can make this out, but it's basically an arrow figuratively turning the meter backwards. Now the utility's not going to buy this energy from you. What they're going to do is credit you the energy so that when you come back at night and flip on all the lights and everything, all of that energy you gave the utility during the day is going to now be given back to you at night. Now on a month-to-month basis, you may have created more energy than you needed. On your electric bill, they will actually show you how much energy you had left over in the bank, so to speak. And you will have a minimal basic service charge on your bill, like it's always there, but all of your usage charges would be eliminated, and that credit would roll forward to the next month. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more in a moment. And then finally, because there's no moving parts in this solar array, you want to be able to keep tabs and making sure that it's working correctly. So component 4 is your data monitor. You can look on your iPad or your laptop or even on the equipment itself, but you will be able to see in real time what your system is doing. You'll be able to run reports to see what it did earlier in the day, yesterday, last year, you name it. So data galore. You'll be able to keep tabs on your system. And also remotely, Ross Solar Group can peek in on your system and see how it's doing. So if you had a question, we can help you investigate remotely. Pictures here, but I know we can't really see that too much. I do like to actually make one point. Solar's not ugly anymore. There are a lot of ugly solar arrays out there with the silver frames and the blue solar cells, and you're like, my God, I would never do that to my house. Frankly, Walter and I here, we're lifers in this industry. We love it. We want to make sure that people are really happy with their solar installation for decades upon decades. And we want to make sure that your solar array encourages your neighbors to also go solar. Just like any form of contracting, if you get a paint job on your house and one contractor does a good job and somebody else doesn't do a good job, a crummy paint job is going to look like a crummy paint job. Just like solar, who you're working with and the contractor you're working with is very important. We take the aesthetics of your home very seriously. We want your house to be a testament to our work that would then support the industry on the whole. Matter of fact, the standard offering in Solarize is an all-black panel, so nice sleek look. Just out of range, I guess. So why should you care? Why would somebody want to go solar? Well, there's a lot of reasons out there. These are the 4 most common that I hear. Believe it or not, everybody kind of comes at it from a slightly different and personal reason. I would say the most popular, though, is to simply hedge against the rising costs of electricity. You're going to be paying this bill for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, as long as you're in your house or any house. So if you could do something about it now to create your own electricity, that's power that you will not have to buy from somebody else at whatever that going rate is. So hedging against whatever volatility may be is a very good reason to go solar. Those returns that you're now getting, that avoided cost, it's simply money in your pocket that you didn't have to spend. It's tax-free. It's not an income. So it's a great way to park an investment and then be able to plan on this newfound tax-free. It's not really revenue because you're not really getting anything, but you're not spending it either. And you can actually quantify how much money you've saved over the years because of your data monitor. It does increase the value of your home on paper. There are subjective issues with aesthetics and whatnot, but it's been proven, especially in the more mature solar markets, that solar can add roughly $5 per watt. So if you had a 10,000 watt system, about $50,000 of value added to your house. And this is, there's plenty of studies out there on the West Coast. We recently got one here in New York, and they concluded that it adds about $4 per watt of value to your house. But like anything, subjectivity is out there when it comes to curb appeal and whatnot. So if you have questions about the resale value of your house and what it would do, we can help you look at that. But essentially, if you can reduce the operating costs of a building or a house, you are increasing its saleability and value on a competitive market. And then finally, last but certainly not least, are the environmental benefits. When you're creating electricity and using it in the same location that it's needed, you're not only offsetting the electrical demand of your home, but of the infrastructure around you to deliver that power to you. This often gets overlooked. So if you are creating, let's say you have a standard solar array that's about 8,000 watts, that's akin to 2 of those rollout generators that you can pick up at Home Depot. Now imagine running those, both of them, all day, every day for 6 to 8 hours. You're going to go through a lot of gasoline to the tune of thousands of gallons. Now that's not the most efficient way to run a house, but a solar array can do that same amount of work silently, motionlessly, and it will do it continuously for 30 plus years. And not only is it doing it for your house, but nobody now has to pipe that power in from 100 miles away from some coal or nuclear or whatever facility. In fact, the utility may burn as many as 2 kilowatt hours to deliver you 1. So sometimes going solar has an effect to a factor of 3. So you're not expected to read all this slide, don't worry, but this is your Con Ed bill. I think everybody in Ossining is on Con Ed.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, okay. So essentially there are a whole lot of charges on here. You've got charges galore, right? They're all tied to your consumption. So when you go solar, these are the ones that are affected by that solar power. Just about all of them. There's one charge up here, sometimes it's down here, but most of the time I found in the top right. It's a basic service charge, has nothing to do with your consumption levels, so you can use no power or the most power on your block. That bill, that basic payment is always going to be there and unchanged. But everything else is going to be directly or once removed, like taxes and whatnot, will be affected when you go solar. Essentially, if you're creating kilowatt hours with a solar array, that's a kilowatt hour the utility can't bill you for, as you can see. They judge all of their charges on kilowatt hours. So how does this become feasible? Well, the Solarize program itself is an incentive, right? Ross Solar Group is now able to consolidate our efforts and our resources. I'm able to present to a room full of people as opposed to going to one person's house and so on and going down the street. We can get the word out and educate what solar is and how it works on a grander scheme. So because of that, the Solarize program is entitled to discounted pricing from Ross Solar Group. So right off the bat, you're looking at a market price that's well below average. I'm sorry, a price that's below market price. So the Solarize is your first incentive. The next is the NYSERDA rebate. The state of New York will actually subsidize the cost of the system right off the top. It's a cash buy down. After that, you're looking at a 30% federal tax credit and a 25% state tax credit. So you add all this up, your average Con Ed homeowner going solar is going to see about 60% of the system covered by these subsidies. And I'll get into the numbers in a moment. So this is going to make a whole lot of sense to most of you, but the way that we do our pricing, it's by the watts. It's kind of like if you're shopping for carpet or flooring, it's going to be by the square foot. So the price per watt is where you start. How many watts you need or how many can fit on your roof is where the consultative process begins. As more people sign up in a Solarize program, that dollar per watt price goes down. So we're already at tier 2. We're not quite there yet, but we think we're going to get there within the next few days. So we figured instead of doing the paperwork more than once, we're just going to give everybody the tier 2 pricing. If more people sign up, in this case more than 29, then the price will drop again. And on the bottom line, for a smaller system, that could be a few $100s. For a larger system, it could be $1,000 or $2,000. So let's get some numbers. Well, not quite. First, there's a few ways to finance a solar array. One, you can buy it, and that's what we call same as cash. So remember, you have that project, you have a project cost, you have that state rebate, you got the federal tax credit, the state tax credit. So why should you have to come up with this much money, the gross amount, if you're really only going to be spending this little amount? So Ross Solar Group will help you bridge the financing. So we'll simply wait on the rebate money from NYSERDA. We can set you up with a zero interest loan for 12 months on the 2 tax credits. You just have to close that loan next year when you get them. But then you're only responsible for whatever's left, and this minimizes your out of pocket. We call that same as cash, because there is a little bit of financing in there, but it's zero interest, no payments. The next is the SunGage Solar Loan. This is my favorite, because now you can actually finance the entire post-rebate amount of the project for 5, 10, or 15 years. Just completely up to you what type of payment schedule you want to put yourself on. And essentially now what you're doing is you're letting the solar savings, the bill you otherwise would have had to your Con Ed, is now being diverted into a loan payment. Money you were already spending is being redirected into a cost-controlled and finite financing solution. And then finally, there's the lease. The lease is, in this case, we use the SunPower lease. SunPower is one of the world's leaders in solar panel manufacturing. They will own the equipment for you, put it up at no cost, and simply invoice you a monthly payment for that equipment, but all of the electrical savings is yours to keep. And if you've got a nice roof for solar, your electrical savings is going to surpass that lease payment, and you will be saving money from day one. It's commonly referred to as the no-brainer. If I can just zero down and I'm saving money and I've gone green, then why not? Actually, we talk a little bit more about the lease agreement here. At the end of the lease, it's 20 years, you have 3 options. The system would be taken down at no cost to you. You can buy the equipment at fair market value, or they might offer to extend the lease to say another 5 years. If any maintenance needs to happen on that equipment, the solar leasing company would actually take care of that for you. Not that there's really going to be any maintenance, but if it did come up, the leasing company would take care of it. So I'm going to go into a few financial scenarios, and I'm assuming your average house. It's not facing true south. Maybe it's got a little bit of rural shade. You know, your neighbor's house, a tree in the the front yard, not really close, but maybe a little ways away. Your average quote unquote decent or good house for solar. So your numbers might actually be better and stronger than this if it's oriented true south and you're in a field. It might be a little bit worse if you've got some excessive shade and you're working with a slightly more challenging site. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means the numbers are going to be variable. Don't worry about reading all this. I'll try my best to summarize. Essentially, when you go solar, you're not necessarily just buying a solar panel system. Nobody cares about a solar panel itself. I think they're pretty neat, but I don't think anybody would want a solar panel for the sake of having a solar panel. It's the energy that that system's going to create for the next 3 to 4 decades. That's what we want. So when we structure a financial solution for any of the Ossining or Briarcliff residents, we are doing our best to make sure that you get all of the energy. You are only coming up with a financial solution for the equipment. All of that energy is yours to keep. So for example, your average 7,000 watt solar array is going to create about 205,000 kilowatt hours in its warranted life, 25 years. If prices froze today, that value of energy would be about $39,000, $40,000 over 25 years. But we all know that that price probably isn't going to stay level for the next 25 years. So if you look at any kind of future escalating cost, that value starts to significantly increase. So 3.5% annually on your every year, rates go up. You're now looking at about $61,000 you are going to spend on electricity that you could have had for free with solar. If rates go up a little faster than that, say 5%, now you're looking at $75,000 in value for the electricity. And the solar equipment is far more affordable than that. There we go. So your average solar array might be 7,000 watts. We're actually finding this to be a little below average because now with the availability of financing, it's more affordable. People are going bigger. But up until the last 2 years or so, I would say a 7,000 watt system was considered the average size. So $26,400 approximately is the gross cost, but the state rebate comes in at about $5,600. You're going to get a 30% tax credit, in this case about $6,200. And then the state tax credit, 25%, but it's capped at $5,000. In this case, that cap would apply. Meaning that the $9,500 is all you'd have to spend on that solar array. This is the same one that I said a moment ago was going to create anywhere from $39,000 to $75,000 in electricity. This is what you would be spending instead. So it's a significant long-term savings. But in the short term, that $9,500 is going to return you about $1,700 in the very first year. Con Ed's expensive. You're paying a lot for electricity. You can now get it for free. Even this relatively small solar array can save you $1,750. That's akin to an 18% return on your investment. You're looking at about a 5-year payback, 6-year payback on this system. These numbers are typical. We've had a couple of our customers who ended up going with much larger systems, but all of these numbers are pretty much level. So the gross cost goes up, the state rebate goes up, tax credit goes up, your energy savings goes up, meaning that your rate of return would stay very strong like that. So it's pretty linear. Any questions on, I know it's a lot of numbers here and I've covered a lot of ground quickly. Any questions on any of
I
this?
just want you to, Stephanie, I would just like you to go over a little bit about comparing this product to some that they might have out there that have approached them,
Sure.
where they're actually renting the roof space rather than putting up a product that they take all the electricity from.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the reasons why I have this slide. A lot of people ask for this slide deck and take it home, so I like to keep this slide in there for them. Thank you, Suzanne. That's a good point. So there are some companies out there, leasing companies or power purchase agreement companies, where what they're going to do is say, we're going to give you a free solar array. You just buy the energy. Right? So what we just established is that a 7,000 watt solar array is going to cost you less than $10,000. The energy is going to be valued at $61,000 to $75,000 over the course of 20, 25 years. So when they tell you a free solar array, you just buy the energy, which do you think is going to cost you more money in the long run? You can't get out of the lease, right? Or a power purchase agreement. If you sign up for 20 years, you're paying that payment. As fixed and as attractive as it might be today, you're stuck with it for 20 years. Whereas if you buy the equipment, you can finance it short term or just pay the cash if you have it, and you'll be done. And all of that electricity will be yours. Even as tempting as it might sound to have a leasing company or power purchase agreement company say, we'll maintain it, we'll take care of it, if anything breaks, you don't want to deal with it, we'll do it. They wouldn't be doing that if this equipment was problematic. And as we learned earlier, it's been around for 60 years or so. We know that it works, it's proven, and any out-of-state, California-based leasing company knows that they're not going to have to fly out to New York to maintain your solar array for you. So if they're so ready and willing to own it for you, you should strongly consider owning it yourself. Thanks, Susan. So that $9,000 investment, $9,500, this is called 10, even 10, it's still a really, affordable price compared to doing nothing. But let's say you'd rather finance, you don't want to just plunk down $10,000. With a 5-year loan, you can now let that $1,700 a year that you're enjoying from the electrical savings coincide with your loan payments, with the repayment of that equipment. And in this case, you're saving about $130 a month of electricity. Well, your monthly payment might only be $132 with $2,500 down. So you're about breaking even for 5 years, and you're done. And you own that equipment. And you put $2,500 into it and about $2 a month. So it makes it incredibly, incredibly affordable to go with, say, a 5-year loan. Now, if you'd rather see more savings up front, we have a 10-year and a 15-year option. So with a 10-year option, it's the same exact system, but your monthly payments dropped to $94. Maybe you put $1,000 down. I've had some people do this with $0 down. They take roughly $100 a month payment, and they're still saving money every month, just like you would with a lease. But this is only 10 years. It's your equipment, and your long-term savings are much, much more significant. So, the way that this might add up in the long run, all this in blue is what you're going to spend on electricity. What the solar array would create over, say, 25 years, 30 years. you would have to buy that power from Con Ed. And this is the expected growth over time. So all this in blue. By structuring a lease, you make a payment up front, maybe $1,000, but you don't have to. You can do zero down if you want to. And then you have your 10 years of payments and you're done. And this is just your whatever remaining electric bill you might still have left, but all of this in blue is yours to keep. That 7 kW scenario, when you play it out for 25, 30 years, I think this is a 30-year model, you've saved over $64,000 as compared to doing nothing. So this is your cost without going solar. This is your cost with the 10-year loan option. These graphs make sense? I know it's a lot of numbers and figures. Next is the lease. So the lease, pretty comparable, right? Where you have zero down, $115 a month. The savings on the electric bill, in this case $136, this is a slightly different system. So by the end of the first year, you saved about $250 with no money down, and you'll just continue to enjoy those savings year after year with that lease. And at the end of 20 years, you're done. You can send the equipment back, or maybe you re-up for another extended lease, or you could opt to buy it as well. The difference is this is a 20-year term, whereas the other ones might have only been 5 or 10. And the technology and the equipment, while SunPower is a top-of-the-line product, I would recommend considering buying it for yourself. The lease is quite nice, though, for people who can't take advantage of the tax credits. You actually do get the New York tax credit in this scenario. So on top of this savings, you'll also be getting about $5,000 on a New York tax credit. So it's windfall in that first year under the lease. So if you wanted to, you knew you had that $5,000 coming next year, put it down. You put the $5,000 down into the system, you'll get that back the next year on your New York taxes. And now your bill went from $115 a month down to $77. You're still enjoying the $136 a month in electrical savings. So by the end of the first year, you're about $700 ahead of the game. And you got your $5,000 back too in the tax credit. So this is a pretty handy way. Leases are great for people who maybe can't take advantage of all the tax credits, or maybe they're just a little risk averse and they don't want to take on the responsibility of more equipment on their house that's technically theirs. It's a great third option. So if you're interested in having your house evaluated, it's an absolutely no cost consultation. We'd be glad to come out, review your roof, review your electric bill, and then show you any and all of the options that you're interested in, whether it just be a cash purchase or same as cash. If you're only interested in the lease, you really like that concept, we'd be glad to get you those numbers and show you how it applies to your house. Every house is different, so we want to be able to take into account shading, your roof pitch, your electrical needs, and appropriately size something for you, and that is absolutely free. If you decide to move forward, Ross Solar Group would pull all the permits. We would file for the rebate. We'd set you up with financing, and we would hold your hand through the whole process. You need to be involved because it's your house, but we would absolutely be taking care of all the nuts and bolts and dotting the I's and crossing the T's for you. All of our installers are employees, so there's no subcontracting, and we would be seeing the project through all the way to final inspection and then being there for technical questions and warranties.
I think it's important to know that the municipalities are involved in this, and that Ross will take care of all your any building permits that are required. And we've all reviewed our building permits to make sure that it's not tedious to get building permits to put your solar on your roof. And just want to make a couple of comments. Green Ossining is our volunteer group that is doing a lot of the outreach programming in this. And Ross Solar is going to be one of the big players in our Earth Day celebration, which is on April 18th. And they will be concentrating on solar, but there'll be plenty of people there for you to talk to, sign up. Very easy. I had it done at my house. They come, they check out your house. Little longer time they spend with you than maybe the reassessment people, but thank goodness. But this is a great product to do. And if you really do drive around Ossining, you do see quite a bit of solar already on our roofs.
But I think it's very, very exciting, and the municipalities are very, very proud. The Village of Briarcliff Manor, the Village of Ossining, and the Town of Ossining are very proud to be able to bring you this program. If you go on to, do you have a web page? The web page on the next slide? I hate to have you stretching your arm. Yeah, so it's www.solarizewestchester.com, or you can go to www.rosssolargroup.com. If you go to solarizewestchester.com, it will have a section for you to pick Ossining Briarcliff, and at that point it will even give you a little page that you can fill in your information, and someone will call you back within a day to make sure they can set up an appointment with you to come and look at your house, which is at no charge, which I find great, no charge. And they have actually told a couple of people that their houses would not pay to put solar on the house. So they're not going to try to sell you a bill of goods. They're going to try to do what's right for your particular home.
Yeah, we're going to be standing behind this installation for at least a decade, maybe more. Our warranty at a minimum is 10 years. So we have to make sure that the system is done right. And we've got a very, very long list of happy referrals. We'll be glad to share with those when it gets to that point. We take this very seriously. We want to make sure that the product delivers for you.
And I just want to, and since we did bring up the reassessment, and that's a question that does come up, we spoke about bringing up the value of your home. Right now, New York State has a, sorry?
The moratorium.
Yeah, it's like a moratorium, but it's, but we have decided that we're not going to use solar as a valuation on anyone's home, because it's a 10-year moratorium on anyway, having it as part of your assessment. So you could fill out an exemption form. Should you go and fill out the exemption form with New York State, they will take it into consideration, because they're just going to take it off again as an exemption. But if Fernando Gonzalez was here, who's our assessor for the Village of Briarcliff Manor and the two Ostings, he would tell you that right now we're not doing any valuation on it. That does not mean it doesn't increase the value of your house. We're just looking at it as another source of you getting your electrical power. You either get it from Con Ed in our situation, or you get it from solar power. So that's the way it's being looked at now.
So in short, it'll raise value of your house without raising the property tax assessment. Right?
The assessment, yeah.
The assessment, yeah, so the tax assessment will not increase as a result. You would want to call your homeowner's insurance and let them know that you have this equipment there. If you own it yourself, most times the premium does not change at all. In fact, when I did it at my house, I realized I hadn't shopped around for a new homeowner's insurance for a few years. I went to my broker, I got a new rate that covered my solar, my fiance's engagement ring, and a couple of other things. My rates actually went down, so it was obviously not a very big factor in the homeowner's insurance rates for me, and I've never had a customer come back to me and tell me otherwise either. So, but definitely you want to call and let your homeowner's insurance know that it's there. So we'd be glad to take some questions, and Walter's here too as well. We have Ed out in the hallway, so if anybody wants any more personalized questions answered, I'd be glad to work. Yeah, in the back.
I've got two questions.
Sure.
So you said,
Can you come up to the mic so that people can hear your questions? Is that okay?
yeah, but
That's why I couldn't hear you.
no, I have two questions. You said it lasts 25, 30 years. Question is, when does it start degrading? And it will potentially still give you something after 30 years. It just won't be at a rate that's what you like. The other question is just pitch it to me. What installing it onto your roof? Have you had any problems with leakage or any problems like that?
Sure.
Just one of my questions.
Sure, some good questions. All right, so the two questions, one was panel degradation and lifetime. You hit the nail on the head. We give people a pretty wide range of usable life, right? 30 to 40 years. Well, that's a big swing, and the reason for that is the panels are warranted for 25 years, but they're still going to keep working. They're still going to keep kicking. It really just depends on how long it's worth it to have them up there before some better idea comes along, right? They do degrade slowly over time. The generalized, it's different from brand to brand, but it's about 0.5% per year. And the warranty actually backs that up. So by year 25, you're looking at about 80% to 85% of the day one efficiency or better. and it's a pretty linear degradation over time. Now, over that same period of time, the value of electricity is going up by much more than 0.5% per year. So every year your gains are actually improving, even though the output is slightly diminishing. So it might be 40, 50 years if you really, keep swapping out the inverters and keep those panels going, it's feasible. And we've witnessed solar panels that were installed in the 50s, 60s, still ticking. One analogy I like to use is the oil derricks down in Texas, right? An oil field owner might have derricks that were gushing back in the 50s, 60s, and now maybe they're putting out just a couple of barrels a day, but it's worth it for them to keep it going because those barrels are so valuable now. So instead of corking it and moving on to the next one, they're just going to keep it going because it's still worth it to them. But you'll be able to make that determination for yourself decades from now after the system has repaid its own value many times over. Now, the second question was roof leaks and penetrations, things like that. We do penetrate the roof. Everything is metal flashed. We've never had a leak. Is there wood around here that I can knock on? A little bit superstitious when it comes to that because I know that what water can do. But we've never had a leak because we take this really seriously, and I like to think of it as a moldy cherry can ruin the whole sundae, right? So we're on top of your house and everything precious to you is below it, so we want to make sure that our work doesn't cause any problems for you. So after 2,000 plus installations, no leaks because of our high quality lifetime flashing assemblies. And I'd be glad on a case-by-case basis to show anybody how we do it and some installation photos and how well that.
And you would review the roof with them to make sure that the roof was in.
Yeah, we don't want to install on a roof that we think is going to have problems as a result of us being up there. So when we're on the roof and we're doing that preliminary assessment, I had a customer, unfortunately, in Ossining. Looks like it's not going to work out for him because he wanted to sign up for solar, and the snow cleared. We get up there, we realize there's a lot of issues with the roof. We actually told him we don't want to install on this roof because we think it would be problematic. So he's looking into getting his roof redone. We'll see. But it was somebody who had signed up, and we weren't just going to plow ahead anyway because we want what's best for our customers. Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
sorry. Oh,
Yeah. Maybe I shut this off accidentally.
sorry.
Oh, the battery died.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
You can repeat it in the microphone.
Okay.
If you have a roof on your house that's more than 10 years old, is this something in which the system can be put on, or are there upgrades that are needed?
Sure. So the question is, what if your roof is already 10 years old, and do you need to upgrade the roof? What happens with the solar? So what Ross Solar Group is going to do, we're going to try to figure out, well, how many more years of life is left in that roof? Now, we're not roofers, but we can give you a guideline. You can always bring in a roofer to give a second opinion on it. But let's say 10 years, it's still a relatively young roof, especially if it was a quality shingle on day one. Whatever life is left in it is going to be extended as a result of the solar panels being on there. Where roofs fail is going to be at the terminations, so where it dies into a chimney or to another roof surface. All of those will still be accessible for maintenance down the road. But I think in the spirit of your question is, well, what happens if you need to do something and the solar panels are up there? It's getting more and more affordable to take that equipment down and put it back up again. And that's because our industry is maturing to a point where not only do you have new integrators like Ross Solar Group who are designing systems, making these kind of outreach and education endeavors, there are other companies who don't know how to design a solar array or consult with somebody, but they know how to work on the equipment. Not unlike the auto industry. So there are companies like Toyota who can build you a car, but you might take it to Al's Auto Shop down the street to get it fixed because they don't know how to build you a car, but they can sure as heck fix one. We're seeing that happen in solar as well. Maintenance companies who can take it down and put it back up again for $1,500, $2,000. So in the grand scheme of things, it suddenly is not that big of an expense, and we'd be glad to plot that on a cost of ownership cash flow for a customer who wants to evaluate not just in the near term, but in the long term cost of ownership. Did I answer your question? Anybody else?
Just one quick question.
Sure, Ellen.
How much of the cost is the inverter? Because that's the one piece that might need to be replaced.
Correct. So the inverter replacement cost, depending on the type and the size, can be anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. And that's, again, I think you have an SMA inverter, those will last you 20 years or more. Those used to be $4,000, now they're about $1,700. They're getting much, much more affordable. So the inverter is definitely going down. It's a small part of the pie, piece of the pie. Thanks.
Any more questions? No. All right, so we want to thank Ross Solar Group for giving us this presentation tonight. And we wanted to make sure we got it on camera too, so we could reach a larger audience than we would normally. It is a pretty nasty night out there. So now what we're going to do, our third item on the agenda is to open the mic up. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, let me.
That's all right. It's getting late. I promise I will be brief. For the record, I am Mike Vaughn. I live in the Woods condominiums. I have a couple things I would like to say this evening. First, I want to thank the board for arranging the very important presentation from the Red Cross about emergency preparedness. It's a very important topic, and I'm frankly depressed that so few people showed up. But I hope those who did come will serve as ambassadors back in their neighborhoods, because this really is important stuff, and you've done a wonderful public service by having them here. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Secondly, in addition to living in the woods, I also belong to an ad hoc group that is comprised of representatives of all of the condominiums in the town. We call ourselves the Ossining Condominium Association, not a very imaginative name, but it says who we are. And it is in that capacity that I am addressing you now. I've been asked by our group to speak briefly on behalf of the town's condos about the homestead option. You knew you couldn't have a town hall meeting without homestead coming up. When we first became aware of the possibility of homestead, I, and others like me, were quick to become visible and loud, maybe even strident, in voicing our concerns. At those meetings, you board members assured us that you were listening to us. But to be candid, we had our doubts. Well, fair is fair. And just as we were quick to criticize, we should also be quick to acknowledge. And to be fair, we were wrong. Clearly, you were listening. Not just to us, but to all the constituencies to whom you have to answer. The private homeowners, the co-op owners, the commercial property and business owners, and us condo owners. So we would like tonight to go on record thanking you. We thank you for listening. We thank you for your balanced consideration of issues and concerns associated with Homestead. We applaud your decision to table the consideration of the Homestead option. The revaluation project is a huge undertaking. I'm sorry Fernando's not here to acknowledge him in that. It would be an exceedingly complex undertaking under the best of circumstances. The fact that it's the first one in 40 years makes the task all the more daunting. It is critically important that it be done right. The stakes are huge, as you well know. And in that spirit, we agree with and wholeheartedly support the board's commitment to focus on the revaluation project, to focus on ensuring that that revaluation is done correctly, that it is accurate and equitable. So again, thank you.
We're down to one mic, that's why I'm smoking a little back up here. Well, thank you. Yes, it is very, very important that we do this reevaluation to the best of our ability and to the amount of new software that's going into the assessor's office to add on to what you mentioned before, as well as just the additional work that has to be done. So we thank you. We send our thanks back to the condo associations, and we'll move on. So is there anyone else that has a comment to make this evening? I thought this was a very educational evening. I will tell you that I've been through the Ross presentation quite a few times because we try to go to all of the sessions. There will be some parlor sessions now, meaning that people will start having Ross Solar in their homes to share this information with their neighbors. Sometimes it's okay to do smaller groups. We've been trying to do larger groups. We've been in Briarcliff, we've been in the village of Ossining, and we did a commercial one over in the unincorporated area in one of the restaurants. So it's a great program. We encourage everyone, and particularly the condo owners. Every time I meet with someone from a condo owner, I give them the commercial, which is Best Energy. It's another company, but they are the ones doing the commercial properties because condominiums are commercial properties. So I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I want to thank the board that was optional to come this evening because it is our 5th Tuesday in the month of March, but because we were snowed out for so many Tuesdays, we decided to do this now. We thought it would be a beautiful sunny day. It's a little snowy out there even tonight. It's the end of March. I want to remind you that Ross Solar Group and all of our great environmental issues will be at Earth Day, which is April 18th. You can go back on the webpage. And on that webpage, on Solarize Westchester, if you go to Ossining Briarcliff, it does tell you what other sessions will be held that could meet with the Ross people. Simply call them up. They'll come to your house. They'll do a quick evaluation. They'll tell you exactly what it will be. And they do a very, very professional job, and we're very proud to be associated with this group. Thank you, Ellen Kahan, for an excellent presentation. Learn something new every time you go through disaster preparedness, right? Thank you for spending some time on the animals, because we know that sometimes animals do get left behind. Some of our natural, and in the last couple of weeks we've had so many unusual disasters that we are very heartbroken over, with none here, but around the world. And so we want to make sure that we're prepared for everything that happens. So with that, I think we'll call it a night. It's one of our earlier town hall meeting nights, but we're very pleased that you could join us tonight. And we will be at 16 Croton Avenue. It will be back to work session next Tuesday night. We'll be at 16 Croton Avenue, first floor boardroom, to do some talking about new subjects that we'll have on our drawing board as we work on new projects that are coming in front of us. So look at our webpage if you want any information. On the bottom of the townofOssining.com webpage, there's a button that says Solarize. You press on that button, it takes you right out to the Solarize page for the Ossining Briarcliff Solarize page. We did get our button put on too, so we're very pleased. So other than that, have a great week. Have a happy holiday this weekend. Happy Passover, happy Easter, and stay warm, stay dry, and think sun. We want the sun. April 11th is the opening day of baseball. Let's put it this way. We're going to have the baseball parades. We have to see about the playing of the baseball, but we're going to at least have the parades. So have a great week. Thank you very much.